Do you wait to look at your pictures, or do you look right away, basically?
No, typically as soon as I can. I mean, to me that's really like the drug, right? I mean, it's like that sensation of seeing what you got. So I kind of get fixated on that. So even if I'm going on a trip, like shooting digitally now mainly, but I like to bring my laptop just so I can work and see what I have.
I'm here with Matthew Hayes. Welcome, Matthew.
Hey, Todd. Nice to be here with you, as always.
Hey, great. Hey, so we had you choose 10 different photos to talk about today. How did you find the process of choosing those photos? Was that something that was difficult or easy for you?
A little bit of both. I mean, it was really fun, first and foremost. I think, if you asked me 2 weeks from now, 6 months from now, I'd probably select a different 10, although some of them would definitely probably be consistently in there. I think the most important thing for me is, like when I think about an image that is special to me or one that I'm most proud of, obviously it has the basic elements of composition, lighting, subject matter, but storytelling. And then always too, there's usually a good story behind a good photo. So some of these have some good stories behind them as well that makes them memorable for me.
Hey, so what can you tell us about this photo, Matt?
Yeah, sure. So this photo is titled Eskimo Kiss. The reason being is, well, there's a couple of things I really like about this photo that stand out for me. One, negative space for me is like a really big part of my photography, shooting with rangefinders, seeing different elements of the photo come together. And often it's like just the slightest bit of separation between two elements, it makes or breaks the photo. So what I like about this picture is you have the woman's nose, who's in the foreground on the left, and then you have, it's like a teenager. Their noses are just touching. And maybe a lot of people who are watching are familiar with this term, but like there's a certain type of kiss when you kiss with your nose. It's called an Eskimo kiss, and I always did that when I was younger with my mom. So this really reminded me of that for some reason. So I like it because of that. It's just kind of an ode to negative space, as I mentioned, which is really important for my work. And then the other thing about this photo is, I think maybe a lot of your viewers can relate to this, but when you're inspired and you have like the desire to, create imagery and really dedicate yourself to a craft, you often have like a type of photograph in your mind of what you want to take or what you want your images to be like. And this for me was one of those photographs. It was like one of the first images that I captured that made me feel confident that I could go create the type of imagery and photographs that I really wanted to take. And so it's always had a special place
And how long
for
ago
that
was this?
reason.
How long ago was this one taken, Matt?
This was taken in 2005, I believe. Yeah, and it's part of one of a long-term project of mine called Lost on Route 93. This is taken in a little tiny town in central Idaho called Mackay, Idaho, and it's during a parade. So it's like a street parade in the summer. And obviously the lighting was really dramatic. You had like the mushroom thunderstorm cloud in the background and all the different geometric shapes going on. But for me, it's just, like I said, it's one of those images that really gave me confidence that I could go create the type of pictures that I was inspired to create.
And I liked the bit of nostalgia in there that it reminded you of the Eskimo kiss with your mom. Great shot.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go to the next one here, Matt. So what can you tell me about this photo?
Okay, so this photo was also taken quite a while ago, I think 2004. And there's a good story behind this photo. I mean, obviously I like the storytelling aspect. This is on the Flathead Reservation in Northwest Montana. This is another image from my Lost on Route 93 series. What's interesting about this photo, the reason why it really sticks out to me is, the process I went through to take this photo. So I actually picked up a hitchhiker when I was traveling through the reservation on Route 93. And he ended up taking me to this neighborhood. It was essentially kind of like a trailer park. And I don't think that's something I would ever do again. So what I like about this picture is it reminds me sometimes of, like, you have to take risks and be willing to put yourself out there. Because, documentary photography, photojournalism, it's really about like meeting people and being willing to put yourself out there and interact with the world. And so I ended up picking up this hitchhiker, like I said, and he was a native gentleman from the Flathead Reservation, and all he wanted was a ride. And he ended up being like incredibly friendly, and it worked out really well. What's interesting is I don't know if I would do that again, in 2023. But it ended up working out really well, because I spent actually a couple days with this specific family you see here in the photograph. But there were a few other families in this neighborhood, and because I gave this guy a ride to his neighborhood, like, he was incredibly thankful, and he really like introduced me to everyone, and they just like accepted what I was doing. I obviously told them I was working on a project, and I was a
Let me ask
photographer.
you about that, Matt. Now, it's a great shot. I love this shot. I like the fact that you've got that gentleman there, the clothes hanging, the kid running through. What was their reaction when you got the camera out? How did you break the ice with them that you wanted to take the pictures?
I just plainly told them what I was doing, and like I said, the gentleman that I drove here, he kind of like made the pitch for me, because it was probably about 45 minutes from when I picked him up until we got to the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of time to talk, and by the time he got there, he knew what I was doing, and he really introduced me. And what's interesting is, like I said, I spent 3 days here, 3 or 4 days, but it wasn't like, 3 days in a row. I was, working and living in Missoula, which is, like an hour and a half, 2 hours away from here. So I had to commute back and forth.
Right.
But I came back, right? And so I think this picture was on like the second time I went back. And by that time, they were really used to me, and I was essentially just like a fly on the wall. And this image is definitely one of my favorite ones from from my time with this group of people on the Flathead Reservation. Yeah, and
That's a
obviously
great.
I like the storytelling aspect. You have the laundry hanging, and you have the child and the adult kind of interacting in their own worlds, but they're also still a part of the same scene. So I think it tells a very realistic account of what it's kind of like to be in that part of the U.S. for sure.
That's a great backstory on that one too. So let's go ahead. Great shot. Let me go ahead and get the next one up here. So what can you tell us about this shot, Matt?
Yeah, this is a portrait, obviously, and what I like about it is it's just really simple, but also I think it has a very specific, like, enticing quality to it. There's something about this girl that really drew me in, and still does when I look at the photograph. What I like about it the most is, I think, the background. It's foliage in the background, but it very well mimics her hair, right? So you kind of have like the composition, but also repeating elements in the photograph. And then there's just something very striking and simplistic about her, and natural. What's interesting about this is this photo happened very quickly. I was actually on a hike, and what's funny about that is I'm not the kind of photographer that like always has my camera. I kind of go hot and cold, like I have periods where I'm just not into it. I'm not feeling it, and I don't always have my camera on me. But I remember before I went on this hike, I was like looking at my camera, and I was like, I don't know if I'm feeling it, but I'm just going to take it. And the whole time I was like, I'm not going to see anything. You kind of play those games in your head sometimes, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So all of a sudden, this is like a rural trail in Montana. And this is like one of the only people we saw. It was kind of a long hike. She comes like walking up, and instantly I was just like, oh, I was just drawn. There's something very captivating about her aura. And I just said real quickly, like, hey, can I take your portrait? And the light was really, really beautiful. It was a little overcast, but it was diffused, and it was in the tree, so you had kind of a little like a dapple of the background. I literally took like 2 frames, but during that time, she was just very like present, and it just worked out. It's just one of those things where it worked out.
You got to
And
love that diffused light, and you got to love it when you
yeah,
nail focus. I was going to ask you, do you use autofocus or do you manually focus typically?
For me, I do all manual. I shoot with rangefinder. It's completely all manual camera, so
So
manual
it's always
exposure.
manual.
Yeah,
So are
yeah.
you're looking through the rangefinder now? Are you doing like what do they call that? Where if it's 3 feet away, you set the lens for 3 feet and shoot, or are you putting 2 kind of ghost images together, kind of thing?
Yeah, a lot of people that shoot rangefinders, like street photographers, will do the zone focusing where they'll just set it, and with a certain aperture, like they'll know that if they're close enough, it will be in focus. I don't do that. I have to see it. It's like a split image focus. So I look through the viewfinder. I don't really shoot from the hip or shoot without putting my eye through the viewfinder. Very, very rarely. I like to look through the viewfinder and make sure everything is how it's supposed to
It's
be.
a lot of fun focusing with the 2
Yeah,
images that you line up.
yeah,
I've had
yeah,
a little bit of experience with that, not much, but
yeah.
it's a whole different experience from the old SLRs that we'd shoot with, where you'd look through the lens. So
Sure.
um,
Yeah.
that's a talent for sure. Thanks for telling us about that picture. Let's go to the next one here. And so, what can you tell us about this? This looks like a pretty wild ride.
Yeah, this picture just makes me feel good. I mean, for a lot of different reasons. The kid in the picture is my youngest son, Emmett. He's quite the character, and this photograph does a really good job of kind of capturing his personality. So there's a little bit of a personal thing going on with it, but on top of that, right, it's a panning photo, which I really like panning shots. I wish I had more of them. For me, they're hard to do, right? Especially with manual, you have to be moving your camera at the same speed of the subject, which is hard to do, and so the exposure worked out really well. And then I just think like it's a really powerful moment. And the other thing that I'm drawn to pictures where I look at them and I'm like, man, I don't know, hey, if I could get that picture, or I'm jealous that I didn't get that picture, or I'm like, that's a one of a kind moment. I don't know if it will ever be recreated again. I'm drawn to pictures like that, and for me, this image kind of represents those things. I just think it's the perfect, snapshot in time.
The thing that one of the things I like the fact that it's a pan personally, but I
Yeah,
also like the kind of framing of the imagery behind it. The way
yeah,
that the imagery came out is really cool, but it's also it's almost like a perfect frame of the photo. The way the leading lines are that kind of lean right behind the gentleman with the cowboy hat on, with
yeah,
the fence and the truck, turned out really really well, that one.
yeah. Thank you. It's interesting. Like the other thing I was going to say is not too long ago, pretty recently, someone else was asking me like what made photos great, and obviously they need the basic elements like lighting, exposure, composition, subject matter.
Hmm.
But on top of that, like I feel like really powerful images, they just kind of have like the mojo, right? There's something
Right.
special about them. And this picture just has the mojo, right? For me, it works. There's something little extra to it, and that's what makes photography so great. Like, is you don't really know when that's going to happen. I mean, how many times do you think you have a great photo, and it may even be like technically sound and it's in focus, but it just still doesn't like take it over the next edge. Um, so that's something that I think about a lot when I'm like selecting pictures and when I look at work. Sometimes they just have the magic, right?
Absolutely. Excuse me. Thanks very much for talking about that one. Let's get this next image up here for you, Matt. What can you tell us about this one?
Yeah. So the title of this photo is called Milk. It's a young couple that I spent a lot of time with during that project we discussed earlier, Lost on Route 93. So it's another image from that series. This is taken at like 2 o'clock in the morning in a little tiny motel, dingy motel that's no longer there in Missoula, Montana, called the Sleepy Inn Motel. And Heather is the gal on the right side of the frame. She's breastfeeding their newborn son, Jaden. On the left side of the frame, you have the father and boyfriend. His name is Jeff. What I really like about this picture is just how intimate I was able to get with this couple. And I feel like this photo really demonstrates that. And there's also something, for me at least, very haunting about it, especially with Jeff. And he had just come off a really late night bar shift. And the couple, they really developed trust in me. And I spent a lot of time with them, probably like, months, 3 months, not all in a row, but I was living in the same city as them. So I would stop by all the time. And we became quite close, and to the point where like they would trust me in this type of moment. So Jeff had just finished a long shift, graveyard shift, cleaning a bar in Missoula, which is like a big party town, college town in Montana. And I think this picture just kind of says what their situation was like at that time. Just a young couple with a newborn, trying to scrape by, living out of a motel. Both Jeff and Heather, they didn't come from great situations. They had troubled backgrounds, and we're really trying to make a go of it. And this type of work is what I really aspire to do the most: storytelling, documentary, and having people let me in their world and tell their stories. And this is kind of one of the best examples of that I feel like I have in my portfolio. And this picture's always meant a lot to me. And I love his 9 Inch Nails tattoo. That's kind of the kicker.
Yeah, absolutely. Trent Reznor probably likes that too. See, I was going to ask you a question about your style of photography. I know that a lot of times that people will talk about doing candid photography. And I guess if I look at this one, I would say it's candid, but they're also aware that you're there. And I think that it speaks to the relationship and the time that you put in with these people before you took it. Is that something that you prefer to do if you can do it? Develop a relationship with the people before you take the photo?
Oh yeah, that's definitely kind of how I work. I mean, every once in a while, like, if you're in the right setting or event or street, like you can just kind of take pictures without asking people. But even on the street and in general, I really like to ask people's permission, and I like to get to know them. I like to spend time with people and then go back, because I think that shows a lot, right? Like, because you're asking a lot of people to, just have them let you into their world and take pictures they don't really know what you're going to do with them. You can tell them it may be a book someday, or it's going to be for a magazine assignment.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't know. So I think if you go back, I think it really shows that you're genuine and you actually care about what you're doing and have an interest in them. What's funny about this picture is if you look at the little nightstand on the left of Jeff there's actually a family snapshot that they have framed. I actually took that snapshot of them. Like the first or second time I hung out with them, made them a little print, and when I went back, I gave it to them. So I like to do that as well, because if I do want to spend time with people, I am usually genuinely very interested in them and do care, and want to try to do as best as I can by them and tell their story.
I'd have to say that those guys were probably pretty stoked to get that picture too, because they've got they're living in a motel right now, and they've got your picture up. That's one of the few things that they have up there, so that's pretty cool.
They were, and this is 2005, so this is before smartphones, right? So a little bigger of a deal back then to get like a family picture, I think.
Well, thanks so much for talking about that. Let's get the next one up here, Matt. Okay, what can you tell us about this shot, Matt?
Yeah, so we talked at the beginning, I think we spoke at the beginning of our talk today about having a lot of time go by before you like an image, or maybe you reassess an image after time. This is a really good example of this. So I literally didn't scan this photograph until like a few months ago, and it's from 2009, I believe.
Wow.
So yeah, this is another image from my project, Lost on Route 93. It's taken in Chalice, Idaho, another very small rural town um, in central Idaho. And this is the father and the daughter. And what's interesting about this picture is I spent a lot of time on this project, like almost 10 years essentially, off and on.
Hmm. And
I got to know a lot of the people and the families along this highway. I would go back over the years. They knew me. This guy Mauricio, he was one of my favorite people that I met during this project, and he was so generous, so nice. Would always like let me hang out. He ran like a salvage yard right off the highway, and he was I think he was originally from Mexico, but he lived. I think he lived in Idaho full time. Anyway, his daughter was who's leaning on his back there. She had come to visit for the first time in like years to see her dad, and they hadn't seen each other in a long time. And I just happened to swing by when this happened, and this is like really the only photo that I got of them that I liked. Now, what's interesting is he was one of my favorite characters during this project in
hmm
this area, but I never got a picture of him that I liked. For whatever reason, I don't know, just never worked out. I was always really frustrated by that because he represented to me like a very special part of this project, but I didn't have like a photo that really captured that or I felt did him justice. So I had spent like all day with he and his daughter, like out in the field. And you got to understand, like Idaho and Montana, the Rockies, in the summertime, especially most of the time when the sun's out and there's no clouds, like it's kind of beat harsh light. It's hard to get great photos a lot of the times. Like you need a really cool moment or something going on. I remember it was really hot that day, and I spent a lot of time with them. I took a few rolls. I was shooting film back then, but I just didn't feel like I got anything. And they were on ATVs and they were out in the field. They came back and I was sitting on like the back of a pickup, and they just stopped in front of me, and like this just unfolded. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is like a cool moment. You know, a lot of the times photos are given to us and it's just kind of our job like not to mess it up, right? And I felt like this was one of those moments. Um, and so that's why it's special to me, because Mauricio, the guy in the photograph, was so generous and became such a big part of that project for me. And then I just love that it's a photo of he and his daughter, and I think you can see their connection.
Absolutely.
Now, why I didn't do anything with it for so long, I don't know. I don't know if I just missed it or I didn't. I thought like the lighting wasn't good. I just never scanned it or printed it until I came across it. Like I said, I was going through all the negatives from this project to organize things and get it better archived. And I came across this negative again, and I was like, oh, I need to scan this. And it just
Now,
it
let
just
me
kind of
ask
hit
you
me.
this: Do you do like contact sheets with your negatives, or do you just kind of put it in and scan it into the
You know, I
computer?
wasn't a big contact sheet guy. I don't know. I always thought I was really good at reading negatives. Apparently not. I wasn't a big contact sheet guy. I usually just go straight to print, or I would do some scanning. So I don't know. It was so long ago. Like I said, it was 2009 when I took this, and I don't know why, but I feel like, you know, it just. But that's the great thing about how this stuff works is it's why you have an archive and keep your negatives. And now I think it's one of the most powerful images from the series, personally.
You know, and
So
I don't know if you've given this photo to Mauricio, but it would be a really cool shot to bring up to him.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
it is a pretty special shot, and if there's been all that time between them seeing each other, it is a real moment.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm sure that it'll bring him back there. I'm sure he'd love this
yeah.
photo. And
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And the other thing I like about it is, you know, I'd say a lot of the type of photography I do, it's, you know, I'm trying to like generate layers and depth and use different elements to tell stories. But sometimes, as I mentioned, you know, earlier when I was describing this, like it's just such a great moment and so simple. That's all you need. And I like that about this picture. It's just simple. So it's a nice change of pace from a lot of my other stuff.
but Yeah, I agree, Matt, and I think that the image itself is very powerful, but I think that the background is the way that there's like very slight coloring differences
Yeah, different
that
shading,
really work.
tonality.
Yeah, they really work. Great shot. Thanks for talking about that one.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's get the next one up here. Now, if I remember correctly, I think this is California.
Yes, this is Santa Monica, California. So the reason why I really like this picture and it stands out to me is, I mentioned earlier in the last image, like 95% of my work, maybe even more, it's all in the Rockies, Idaho, Montana, and it's like harsh, contrasty light. There's a lot of shades of brown here. You know, obviously in the summertime you can get cool thunderstorms, but typically we don't get like great golden light, you know, like there is closer to the equator, or in more like tropical areas or beach towns. You know, I don't live in that area, so what I love about this picture is it's one of the few images in my, you know, portfolio that kind of has that quality, uh, and it's also in more of a urban environment. This is at the Santa Monica Pier. And so I just don't have a lot of images like this, and I love street photography, and you know, obviously the lighting is very dynamic, and there's just a lot of energy and movement to the photograph, and the sky is very intense. What's interesting about this picture, and this happens a lot of times with me, uh, I was I was there the night before, just kind of hanging out, walking around, and I kind of saw the vision of maybe I could get this picture. Um, it's hard to tell, but it's actually sloped down. It's on a hill. There's like a big street walkway up to like, you know, up from the Santa Monica Pier. And I remember looking down and thinking like there were people like walking towards me, and I kind of had the vision of the shot. But I thought I needed a tripod, so I came back the next day. This is actually with the tripod because I thought maybe if I could like get the motion, I could capture the energy, because there were a lot of people. Like, this is a very kind of a touristy area, and like a lot of people visit this, so there's big crowds.
Uh-huh.
So I thought if I had like a slow shutter, I could try to capture the, you know, the feeling and the movement and the energy. So I came back and set up there, and I just kind of loved the expanse. And then, like, you know, luck, you need luck. This crazy storm rolls in. But just, you know, just north of the storm, like the sun was sitting there as a hole in the sky. So you just had like this really intense, like golden California, like beach light. Um, and these two girls actually stopped and were just talking to me because I had a tripod. So I probably, you know, it's pretty obvious what I was doing. But they were just hanging out and talking, and they were totally cool with me taking their picture. And then people just started like flooding towards me. So I was just sitting there, like, you know, with the shutter release, just taking frames, and it's just really worked out.
I
So
tell you, every
it's
time I see a Ferris wheel like that, I know I'm taking a picture. It might not turn
yeah,
out, but I tell you, that a Ferris wheel is something great about a Ferris wheel, the picture. And one thing I really love about this one is the motion blur of the one individual,
yeah,
as and
yeah,
then that contrasted to the left hand of the image where there's no motion blur, and that's pretty cool in my opinion.
yeah. Thank you. And that's definitely like one of the things, you know, I saw the night before and wanted to try to catch. So yeah, it worked out for sure. But what's funny is I probably took like a whole roll of this. This is the only frame that even came close to working out.
Let's wait. Well, I mean, if you get one good shot, then good
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. So just goes to show you.
I heard that it's like the ratio. If you get somewhere between 1 and 3 when you get a roll, you're doing okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll take 3. I'm not so sure about 1. Thanks for talking about that one. Let's get the next one up here. Here we go. So what can you tell us about this one, Matt?
Yeah, this one's called Store Clerk. Um, this is another photograph from my Lost on Route 93 series in another small rural town in northwestern Montana called Ravalli, Montana. This is also on the Flathead Reservation. I mean, there's a lot that I like about this picture. I think it's, you know, we talked earlier about photos that you don't think you could recreate or that are one of a kind. This one to me obviously is. Um, Details are obviously really important in good photos. I like finding little snippets of details. Maybe it takes you a few times to look, but once you find them, it's kind of like a nice hidden reward that really takes the picture to another level. So you got the like 1977 Dodge van for sale sign in the bottom corner, which to me is just like awesome, right? Like
Right?
very,
With the
very
drawing of
storytelling.
the van,
Yeah,
right?
with the drawing and just like very telling of rural Rocky Mountain life, and like something you wouldn't see that, I think it'd be hard to see this. This is also taken in 2004, I think. But the other thing that I really like about this photograph is I really like long-term projects, and the way that they usually like come to fruition for me is you have an idea, and you don't quite know if you can pull it off, and the only way to find out is like you just go out and see what you can get. But until you get one or two images that really like say to you like, yes, this is what I had in mind, and then give you the confidence to keep going, you don't really have anything. You don't really have a project. This was one of those images for me that like when I saw this frame, I felt like, okay, I had something. Like I have this project. There's some substance to it now, and it gave me a lot of confidence to like keep moving forward. Right. Um, this is the kind of image that I thought, really told the story and the emotion and the vibe and the feeling of what I was trying to portray with that project. So that's what I really like about this picture.
When I see this picture, I wonder, number one, what song is he playing? So it looks like he's doing maybe like some lead guitar. And then I also wonder if that guy actually was the guy that drew the sign with the van on there.
It was so he was a store clerk, but he owned the gas station. But it was more of a rundown gas station, and he lived in the back with his family. He had like 5 kids, um, and so I actually hung out, a few days with this family as well. Um, and he had that. I mean, it's pretty slow. It's pretty rural, so it's not like he's bumping with customers coming in and out, right? Um, so he had his guitar with him quite a bit in the back, and would play periodically. And then I was walking outside, just kind of doing a lap, trying to see what's going on. Because as you know, like when you're out shooting, especially when you're doing documentary stuff, there's a ton of dead time. You just like walk around and picking up daisies, kind of thing, and just kicking your feet in the dirt, waiting for stuff to happen. Anyway, I was outside just milling around, and he kind of just came to the window, and I happened to be ready, and I just started taking pictures, and I think he obviously saw that, and we kind of had like a good connection. But it didn't last very long. Like he only stood in the window for like a little bit. He was doing that. So there's only like 2 or 3 frames, and then he kind of walked back with his guitar to the front desk of the store. But it was just kind of cool how it played out. Yeah.
He was probably figuring like, am I actually lead guitar or am I rhythm?
Yeah, but
Great shot.
he was a really nice guy. His name was Eric Gunderson.
Thanks for talking to us about Eric there, Matt. Let's get this next one going here. We go. What can you tell us about this one?
Okay, so this is from the Crow Reservation. This is from my series Magic City. It's actually a ongoing series I've been working on for the last couple years. This is taken at the Crow Fair right after a crazy thunderstorm, kind of like before things got going. Like, there were like a lot of vendors just setting up, and there were like local kids just kind of milling around. And what I really like about this picture is I think it does a really good job of capturing life and the energy on these reservations. And it's a very unique culture. Like horse culture there is paramount. It's very strong. These kids grow up like learning how to be on horses, how to break horses. It's really like a fabric of their culture, and it's pretty amazing. So, if you're not used to it, like seeing kids ride around on bareback ponies, just like it's, kids from some city suburb on a bike. That's literally what it's equivalent to. Is pretty visually stimulating, but also I think tells a very good story about like what it's like out here. So
I tell you, Matt, the horse in the forefront of that picture, the way that came out is just it's amazing. You can almost feel the fur, like it almost
yeah,
feels
they're
you can reach out. It turned out really well.
yeah
I love the
they're
guy. I don't know who is that. A kid in the background that's kind of running.
yeah. So in the
That's
back,
awesome.
this photograph's called Puddle Jumper. So yeah, but they're horses. They're beautiful, right? I mean, it's amazing. So anyway, like I'm trying to capture the kids on the horses riding bareback, and then like a lot of good photography, street photography, like you got to get lucky. And this kid just like ran across real quickly, and I just ended up to take a frame. I ended up taking a frame at the right time. As we've touched on a few times during this conversation, the pictures that I think are the most special when I look at other people's work or pictures I'm jealous of or really like are the ones that I think like you can never recreate, right? This picture to me is one of those, like it's definitely one of a kind.
Absolutely, I
And that's
agree.
why I like it. Yeah.
And I see that pizza back there, and it makes me hungry.
Yeah.
All right, hey, thanks for telling us about that. Let's get to the next picture here. So, what can you tell us about this one, Matt?
All right. Yeah. So this is another photograph from my Magic City series. Um, there's a couple of reasons why I chose this picture. Uh, I don't know if it's my one of my 10 best, but I'm a big believer in like your next picture is your best one, and there's always the opportunity today to go take like your next best photo. So this is my most recent image that I think is like good or like powerful. So I chose it kind of in the spirit of like the exercise of picking 10. Like I am a big believer in like you're just another outing away from like generating a great picture. And I think it's good to have that mentality because you never know, right? Now, with that said, I still really like the image. I call this the love triangle. um, and there's a few reasons why, obviously, but like you could kind of get lost trying to count how many triangles are in this photo. And I'm a big fan of like repetition and repeating elements. So I think there's like a lot that you can look at here and kind of get sucked into. You know, there's at least like 10 triangles. You have both the couples in the back of their arm. Obviously, the white triangle on the roof is just kind of weird and random. But because there's all these other triangles in the photo, it kind of just fits, right?
Yeah, it works, man.
Yeah.
I
And
like the
then,
guy's hair is kind of a triangle too, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. And then obviously like this picture to me like really captures like the vibe and the energy of yeah.
And so this is the latest in your Magic City series.
Yeah, it's a photo from that series. You know, this this picture it took some work. The guy in the background kissing the girl is someone that I met a few days before, just on the street, in a very specific part of town. Uh, and he was nice enough to let me take a picture that day. I didn't like any of the images I got, and I always try to get people's contact information, and I always ask if I can come back, as we talked about earlier. That's more difficult than you think. Usually, like even if you get someone's contact info, like they don't pick up, or they're not interested, or they're like, I don't want this guy photographing me. But he was really cool, and he's like, yeah, come by, come by the neighborhood. I'll be hanging out. If you want to try to take some pictures, you can. So I spent like a few hours with these people, well, the couple at least, that afternoon. Um, and then like a lot of things, it just worked out. This photo kind of developed, and then the gentleman on the on the left hand side, kind of wandered into the frame and was kind of in his own world and was cool with what I was doing, and it just worked out. Um, so yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, like aside from the triangles and everything else, I really like the light. There's like
Yeah, it's
dark
got great light.
storm cloud in the background, which doesn't always happen here. So it was nice I was able to take advantage of that opportunity. And then it just has that vibe of the city and part of the city that I'm drawn to try to visually capture and create imagery with. So
Great shot. And I appreciate you coming on. Let me go ahead and get us both up here on the screen real quick. Hey, so I appreciate you coming on and talking about your 10 photos, and quite a range. One thing I noticed that a lot of the stuff that you shoot, it's kind of relationship or family based, and that's pretty cool. And I like the fact that you're always going back and talking to these people. Very interesting 10. Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Matt.
yeah, thank you, Todd. Really, really appreciate it as well.